The learning space plays an important role for the learning capacity of the students. For young kids, it is also the environment for them to explore their capacity and form their personality. Learning at a young age these days is not only encapsulated in teach and learn, but should also stimulate communication skills and self-confidence.
Well, children, unfortunately, are playing less because much of education has become quite formal in terms of instruction, and so children are having a lot of screen time and not much play time, especially outdoors and social interaction with others. A lot of instruction has been given and children need to go back to creative play and being spontaneous.
Recognizing the importance of learning space for children, a lot of creative learn and play models have been formed, such as Gistillation of the social enterprise Dohe or Think Playground, Tomato Children's Home, just to name a few. But in today's program, we will learn about CIRCLETIME English Play Studio, a unique English-Vietnamese bilingual model founded 5 years ago by Sophie Nguyen and Robert James Everett. This is now the weekend home of many kids between the age of 2 to 12. Here the children are encouraged to learn English in an environment of openness, self-respect, stimulating the imagination and creativity.
Now, in our special episode on the Children's Day, we want to introduce to you a very creative English learning studio in Hanoi. And let's jump into the talk with the director of CIRCLETIME Hanoi. Thank you, Robert, so much for joining Sharing Vietnam today. First of all, CIRCLETIME is a very unique model, introducing kids to be engaged in a English-speaking environment from such a young age. So what inspired you to open this learning area?
The inspiration comes from a lot of places. It comes from a book about a Japanese girl called Toto-chan, about a little girl who feels out of place in school. It comes from a methodology out of Northern Europe where they use a circle called CIRCLETIME to get children to express how they feel. It comes from a new idea about children learning, so they should be engaged and active.
How important is for kids to learn and be engaged in an interactive English-speaking environment from such a young age?
Language acquisition can be done at any age and is good at any age. However, children are quicker to learn. And all of our phonetic sounds come at age 2. It's like 2 months before age 2 and 2 months after age 2. It's a very, very specific time. Children who learn the English sounds will have perfect pronunciation later in life. It does impact. Also, when you get to age 5, it drops off, the ability to learn a second language. And when you get to age 12, it drops off very, very suddenly. I've seen that when children are exposed at a young age, they have a more natural, more flexible language, and they can think in the language. They're not just matching up the right response, they're thinking in the language. And that's really what this generation has to do. The last generation did well. They learned a second language. This generation is going to have to use it in business to do business with the world.
What are ways that CIRCLETIME has helped kids to develop their English skills?
Well, it depends on the age of the child. For a young child, it's about sensory, developing the sensory and basic motor skills. That's the first thing. Also, not reprimanding them or punishing them when they do things out of the box. Instead, move them on to another activity. For older children, it's about more complex cognitive skills. For example, putting together different elements in a science experiment to come up with an idea. Yeah? In art, showing them the basics of an art project but then encouraging them to do something else that we haven't shown them.
Today is a typical weekend morning at CIRCLETIME English Play Studio. The children came very early, in the joyful, somewhat excited. Different from attending any English centers, dough making and morning glory boat building are the main activities today for the small kid group. Meanwhile, the big kid group are starting with interesting chemistry activities. Many children have participated in this creative learning space for a long time and have always loved the appealingly fresh activities, regard this as an indispensable playground for each weekend routine.
Con thích học ở đây vì lớp sẽ làm vì có rất nhiều thứ sẽ làm cho con vui. Các đồ chơi làm cho con vui và các bạn và các thầy. Con học ở đây từ 6 tuổi. Con rất thích học đây vì ở đây rất vui. Khi học ở đây thì con biết được nhiều từ tiếng Anh mới hơn ạ.
We present the opportunity to the child, and if one child wants to do it this way and another child wants to do it another way, then we allow them to do that. Because then they're able to learn independently and have more imagination. And as a child, imagination is very important. The similarities of children around the world is a sense of surprise, a sense of adventure, a sense of mystery, learning so much so quickly. The differences are that the expectations that are put on children, I think, are higher in Vietnam, but the love of the children and allowing them to explore, I think, is more here than in the US.
Vietnam, with its rapid transformation to integration, requires strong force of intelligence and labor. We can expect that with the development of innovative and open educational models like this one, the country's young generation will grow up with the confidence of language, assertiveness in action, and above all, true knowing of self-worth and self-purpose.
How do you think the ability of Vietnamese students in being engaged and being interactive with kids from different countries or foreigners and interactive with them in a language other than their mother tongues?
The kids are very, very adaptable and get onto it very quickly. They become engaged in the activities as long as they're physical. As if we start talking to them for a long time to explain something, they're not interested. They're not interested. All of our explanations are less than 5 minutes, and then we get them involved in the activity and speaking. Very young children, age 2, cry when they leave their mothers. There's that separation anxiety that generally takes under 2 hours to reach an equilibrium. Children very quickly bond to other children. With the foreigners, they seem to be very comfortable with it because the other children are comfortable. When we start our program every Sunday morning at 9 a.m., we always have teachers out front, and we introduce ourselves, and they have to introduce themselves. So we break the ice. Yeah. A big challenge is in Vietnam is quietness, shyness, holding back, introversion. And in the boys, it's often in hyperactive activity, and in girls, it's in quietness. So we want them to become active.
This learning space gives kids the cognitive abilities, yet this is very hard to assess. So how do you assess the change of the kids?
Parents were skeptical of our approach because it's very, very different from what is taught in Vietnam right now. So we did lose a lot of children, but we stayed to our vision, and eventually we found people were confident in it and started to refer us to their children or their parents. Parents are always asking me, how can I teach my children? How can I teach my children English? And my answer is don't. Don't teach them. Give them books. Give them books and read to them, and create a ritual after dinner or before they go to bed. Make them excited about reading books, and they will read the books themselves.
Do you know any similar learning environment like this in Hanoi? And do you think that there is enough space that provide the learning opportunity for kids in Hanoi yet?
There are lots of places that are doing art and art in English, but I don't think they have the idea of the CIRCLETIME concept, and I don't think they have the idea of focusing on the child. This is more of a common idea in Northern Europe, and Northern Europe is very interesting because they have the most successful bilingual program. They're saying, okay, we can paint with bubbles or we can do yoga, but what's the point? We're not creating artists or yogis. We're trying to develop a child. So unless you have a framework to put it in, a methodology to apply it, then I think it's something's lost. The second thing is authenticity. Authenticity. Are you really involved in your program? If you take someone else's idea, that's great. Is it real for you? Is it important to you? And what is your attitude towards the subject when you teach the children? I think this is very, very important.
I believe that the cost is also one of the problem with learning, providing this type of education for little kids. What are the ways that this kind of curriculum can be adapted into a more popularized environment?
Vietnamese have the right attitude towards education, and they really have done a lot in the past 10 years. They've done a lot. And the schools have come up so quickly. I don't know if we need to open more schools, but maybe we need to bring in part of these programs into an ordinary curriculum. So let's keep the mathematics, keep with the literature, keep with studying English in terms of grammar. That's okay, but take time to bring this in for part of the day. I think a lot of Vietnamese have traveled abroad now and are bringing these ideas back. I think a lot of mothers are very interested in this. So I think the drive to open up schools like this will come from a Vietnamese motivation, their respect for education and looking for new solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Robert, so much for joining Sharing Vietnam. I hope that there will be many other educators in Vietnam see the importance of giving kids the open space for them to develop themselves and also develop their language skills. That's the end for Sharing Vietnam today. Thank you so much for watching us in our special episode today. We hopefully will give you an options for kids that now the summer is coming. Hopefully the parents will have more selections that to send their kids to space like this in Hanoi.